This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs.
Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course, follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by Sean Olson, who's recently directed the film Camp Hideout. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Thank you very much.
I guess my first question for you is, how did Camp Hideout come to be? Like, where did it come from, and how did it get produced into this film?
So I directed two other like family-friendly films, F.R.E.D.I and Max Winslow and the House of Secrets. And the producer saw both those movies. They're both like sci-fi films, but with like a family, angle to them. He saw those films, really enjoyed the films, and then pitched me Hideout, which is, a summer camp film, with a Home Alone kind of vibe at the end. And he knew I would work well with kids. He knew I'd work well with the content. And when I read the script, I grew up going to summer camp. And so I read the script and it hit all the things for me. I like doing family films, a huge summer camp kid, and, it just had a lot of heart in it. So that's pretty much it.
So when you came on board, you mentioned it has like a camp, like those old camp movies from the 80s, which is immediately what I think of, but also like that Home Alone vibe to it. So I'm wondering, when you got on board, where did you go to for inspiration in terms of how you wanted to direct this and build this film?
That's a really good question. Like obviously I'm a student of films of the 80s, like Back to the Future and The Goonies and that. So for me, when I was looking at it, originally the script was like the main protagonist was like 20 years old. So I really wanted to shift it to a younger person's perspective. So that's where we shifted it to a 15-year-old's perspective. And I really wanted to kind of give you that youthful, fun, I looked at it as like youthful, fun, energy, visual humor, because a lot of kids respond really well to visual humor. So there's a lot of like sight gags and things like that. And, and with the stunts, it was something that we worked on a lot, like trying to figure out like what the best stunts would be for this type of movie and what would garner up the most laughs. And then stylistically, one of the big things for me, because it is a family film and it also is a kids film, you have a lot of kids in the movie. You have scenes with maybe like 11 kids. So I worked like really hard with our cinematographer, Isaac Alonji, to create like moving masters so that it was long continuous takes, so we could get everybody in there and not have to shoot individual isolated shots of each cast member. And it made the movie a lot more dynamic and a lot more interesting.
I think what attracted me to color correction was the fact that we were like the next stage of cinematography. And the creative side was huge, trying to understand what was wrong with an image, how to balance it, trying to understand how to let the tools do what you want them to do. Where else can the technology go? What else can we do? I'm very interested in trying to mold the image and create the best look possible. And whatever tools are out there, you want to try and latch onto them. I'm Eric Whipp, and this is my course on color correction.
Well, so you mentioned a couple of things in here.
Yeah.
And I do want to know, what was your favorite, I guess, pratfall or sight gag that you got to do, or the one that made you laugh the most on set?
Oh boy. I think the mud pit was the funniest because, and there's a lot, we really condensed it down in editing, but watching it live, the first time we had the actors go do it, and they jumped in, they moved around, they got mud in their face, they got mud everywhere. And then once we put the stunt people in, like they just went to town. Like they were all over. They would slip, slide, they tried to climb out, they'd fall. And it went on for like a minute to 2 minutes. It just got funnier and funnier as it went. And in the movie, of course, we always have to cut it down, but that was the most fun. And then I would say the other one that was really, really fun was the food fight. And that's something that we really planned out very meticulously. it's, you know, it's one of those things where you have a food fight, you have to like, you know, there's a big cleanup after that. And so they worked hard on making sure that, you know, was fun.
Now, you were a kid of camp.
Yep.
Did you guys ever have a food fight like that?
Never had a food fight. No. I just went to summer camp with my youngest son, which was really cool, but no food fight there either. It was yeah, we didn't have anything that crazy.
Now, you said you were a fan of, Back to the Future, and you got Christopher Lloyd on this.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in knowing how, because you had Corbin Bleu and Christopher Lloyd, and I'm wondering, once you have these two actors on your cast, how did you work with them to help them find their characters?
So Christopher came with some ideas. So like when we brought Christopher in, a lot of it, like we talked about, like his like what his wardrobe would be, like the look that he would have. And, we talked a lot about, where he is coming from as this curmudgeon kind of mean camp counselor. And there was a personal aspect in it for him as well, with some of the stuff that happens later in the film. And so he brought that in, but we had a lot of conversations about him being, changing from, not everything is what you see with this character. With Corbin, it was interesting because, life imitated art, where he is a very, he was very, like mentorish to our younger cast. And that was really what we had talked about, is like, he's this mentor character, but he's not overly pushing like what he wants. He understands he's been in the same situation as our lead character, Noah. So he didn't really, he gave him some space, but he's kind of nudging him along. And so we really talked about that. We talked about the mentoring aspect. But on set, it was amazing because he was mentoring all the young actors as it was. So, it was like we could pivot that into what his performance would be.
Interesting. Now, I do want to know, because you've also edited, and you edited this project, if I believe I'm correct. And, when as editors, you get the footage in, and whatever was shot, you get. And so you have to sort of figure out what is the most realistic or authentic performance and go from there. But as a director, when you're auditioning people, you're not necessarily in the greatest spaces. You're just whatever room we can get, get this person up in front of us. It's not the best environment for the best performances. So how do you, when you're going through the auditioning process, determine or figure out or discover our authentic performances?
That's a really interesting question because, on this particular movie, it was done during COVID. So we didn't have in-person auditions, which is always different than when you do like a live audition, because when you're doing a live audition, you have the actor that comes into the room and they give the performance, but you also get a sense of who they are as a person when they come in, and they start asking questions, and they start, having just nice little conversations with you. So you're like, oh, like on top of the performance, like this person actually seems like they would be really fun to work with. They have a really good personality, and we could pull that from that. With our movie, everything was done via Zoom, or not even Zoom. It was everyone self-taped and sent it in. And that's become a very common thing now, is, everybody is self-taping. And it's actually the good thing is that you get to see a lot more people. So with our lead character, Noah, we saw way more people than we normally would see just because of that. And so when you're looking at each of the performances, you're looking at it, and you may have like 3 people that you really, really like. And you start looking at it and you go, okay, well, if I have this person in this and as the lead, it's this type of movie. If I have this person in the lead, it's this type of movie. So you're always kind of like looking at that. But with some of the actors, I gave notes and they retaped their self-tapes. But yeah, so you really, when you're live, you usually get the opportunity, if you like somebody's performance, to, throw out a wild note here or there. And it doesn't have to be like what you want the character to be. It can just be like, oh, I want to make sure that this actor can take notes and change up their performance. Which is always really important, because you don't want the same, like every take to be exactly the same. So, and then that translates into, the editing where, we always try to get like a variety of takes, a variety of performances. And then not only that, yeah, like it's usually just trying to get like that nice variety of takes. Yeah.
No, well, and you, interestingly enough, and I don't know, I'm assuming you're aware of this, but you also had the Fun Family Squad from YouTube.
Yeah.
I guess, how did that impact your schedule? How did that impact you, since they are also having to make fun family content for their YouTube channel?
I give major props to my first AD, Kyler Wilson, because scheduling this was really tough. You have kids hours, so you have, a lot of everybody in the movie, all the kids were kids except for our lead, who was 18, but everybody else was younger. So scheduling that out, you have like this giant grid of like, this is when people can work, and you see like he had like little lines like, this person has to go to lunch at this time, and this person has to have downtime, and this person has to have class. So it was something that we really worked in. And one of the things that the Family Fun Squad really wanted to be a part of, and pretty much all of them, was the food fight. So that was something that we had on the schedule, and we looked at like, where are we going to get the most people? And I think we did it on a Saturday because, we could get kids out of school, and that, because we shot in September of 2021. So it was a little bit of a challenge to get everybody there for that. But that was like the one where we had definitely the most extras. So
interesting. Now, so because this is sort of like a fun, like we talked about, it's like an 80s sort of throwback. How did you, that sort of old style, or not, I guess not old style, but that style of filmmaking seems to have a very playful approach to it. So like, how did you play on set, and sort of, did you change things on set or let people ad lib, or how did you
I would say like the actors that ad-libbed the most were probably Josh Childs and Josh Inakala, because they had more experience than a lot of the younger actors. And it's always that kind of that rough thing where you give actors the ability to improv. Sometimes it goes really well, and sometimes you're like, okay, let's go back to what it was scripted. With them, they added a lot of like little like nuanced things that was super fun. And so we always try to keep the whole movie light in that regard. Like we always try to keep it, kid driven, visual humor based, and, very, everything kind of moving. I'm trying to think if, like there was a couple really good ad libs from Corbin Bleu. We have like this like storytelling sequence where he talks about Christopher Lloyd's character, and like how his dog is like this like cyborg dog, and at the end he added a nice little button to like scare the kids, and that was just something that he threw in there, and then he added like an extra line in there. So it was really like, with him and his experience, it was really, really fun. Yeah.
So then how do you, as a director, like to work with actors on set? Like how do you approach working with them?
Well, it depends on the actor. Like I do talk to the actors ahead of time, because like some actors, they like to do their takes first. Some actors like to do their takes last. So I always kind of get an idea of like, where do they think they're going to be strongest in the scene? Like, would you rather do the heavy stuff first? Would you rather like ease into it? So I generally work in it in that regard. And then, we'll talk it through. We'll do a reading of it, and we'll talk about like character motivations and tensions, and where they are in the arc of the movie. And then as the takes kind of progress, like, you have like little notes along the way. And I try not to be long-winded with the notes, because sometimes you can go like on and on and on, and it's like one or two words could like totally, make it work. So, but
now you've gotten to work with some pretty interesting actors. What has been the performance that blew you away on set?
I would say my favorite moment was Christopher Lloyd walking out after the food fight, because what he did was, everybody's throwing food. He comes out with this air horn, blasts it for about 30 seconds, And then he gives like this long Christopher Lloyd monologue, this like angry, like, you're going to clean up this and you're going to do this. And then at the very end of the take, the entire crew and cast and extras jumped up in applause. And I'd never seen that on a set before. And it's something I'll remember forever. It's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I have one last question for you. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
Oh, this is a bad one, obviously. I'm a fan of Jaws, and like Jaws 3, as terrible as it is,
Yeah,
and it is terrible, right? It's
Yeah.
it's a pretty awful film. I don't know. There's something about it that makes me laugh when I watch it, because like the filmmaking is really not that great. I mean, it was
Yeah.
made for 3D. It was something I saw when I was a kid. And so I would say, as far as like a bad guilty pleasure, it would be that.
I
Yeah.
don't know how Marine World agreed to be in that film.
Yeah, it was actually SeaWorld, but yeah.
SeaWorld, that's it.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
In Canada,
I
we
mean,
call it Marine World. So
it's so bad. It's like we watch it, like my wife and I watch it with the kids, and we're like, this movie's terrible. But I don't know, there's just something charming about it, I guess. And I think when I was a kid, when I watched it, it made me want to work at SeaWorld. But yeah, it's Leah Thompson's first movie, actually.
oh, there you go.
So that's, yeah.
Turns out it was like a recruiting tool for SeaWorld.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. And then, it's like, at least she survived from that movie, right? Like she did some great things after. So yeah, it's a terrible movie, but yeah.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so
And
much.
that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com or, of course, on Instagram at filmmaker_you. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching.
This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs.